Can you use type and not use it in a personal development way? Yes, if you want to hit a glass ceiling. But you're not going to understand the heartbeat of it, and it's always going to be this sort of 1 degree of separation from the purpose of the model. In order to get to translate, we have to use it for development.
Hey, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Markwitz.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we're here with an incredible live studio audience in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you. We have people that came from all over, people that drove down from Boston this morning. We have people from Canada, Chicago, New York, right here in Pennsylvania, all over, Nashville. I mean, people from all over the country, all the way down from Florida. And we're excited to come together in person. We think that gathering in person at live experiences is so powerful for us as humans. We can connect and we can engage. And so I'm excited. Thank you so much for coming out. And if you're listening to this or watching this back, we'd love to see you at a live podcast in the future. I think it would be really cool to meet you in person. And then we're all going to be hanging out after this. So I'm looking forward to that. That's actually that's the dessert of the podcast. It's like I get to hang out with people, connect, learn about you, and I think that's really cool. So thanks so much for coming out with me and Antonia today. We were doing a workshop last weekend right here in Gettysburg. We're actually doing a workshop this weekend too, our Personality Life Path Mentorship. But last weekend we were doing a workshop called Whiteboards and Archetypes. And this was a brainstorming and archetypical workshop for our Advanced Personality Profiler training students. Anybody that had signed up for an advanced program, one of our more advanced ones after they'd gone through our Profiler Training 101, was able to come to this for for extra bonus special event. And it was designed 2 days to help them find how are they going to take what they've learned about personality types in their personality profiling and set up maybe a coaching practice or a business around it. And so I came up with a lot of plans to help with the marketing and the messaging of this, right? I thought it was all external stuff, and I was going to set up all this like, okay, here's how you kind of position yourself. Here's how you create media. And what it actually ended up happening is we spent almost the entire weekend working on people's messages, like what they actually wanted to communicate to the world, how they were going to show up as a coach, what the content was that they were going to bring forward. It was a really wonderful weekend. It went a little different than I expected it. We kind of did a lot of whiteboarding, and we were helping tune into people's usually the experience, the challenge that they overcame was part of the story of what they wanted to give and offer to people. So it was a really great weekend. And in the weekend, I introduced this concept that I learned from my mentor. His name is Eben Pagan. And he, in some of the market materials and stuff, introduced this concept. This is a very easy framework. He talks about when we're messaging to people, we can these 3 words come up: relate, educate, translate. Relate, educate, translate. And we were talking last weekend with some of the students and some of the working we were doing is there's really these 3 zones. When we talk about personality types, when we talk about personal growth, when we talk about some of the Jungian concepts like cognitive functions or all the different concepts that Personality Hacker usually produces, talks about, we can think about it in these 3 broad zones. Relate, we all know what this is in the type world, right? If you've watched YouTube videos or you've heard audios or you've read things, the relate framework is a lot about like, oh, I'm an ENFP. I have ENFP preferences. You're having ENFP. You do that too? Oh man, I can relate to that. That's a relatable thing in your life and in my life, and we can connect on the relational, like relating on this topic or something in the type world. So that's one way that personality types are talked about. The other way that they're talked about is through an education frame. And I think this is where the dominant energy in personality types is right now. And it's been there for a long time, maybe as far back as it goes in the Myers-Briggs system. But we have people that educate. They talk about the distinctions between the functions, and we do this sometimes on the podcast, right? We educate about how this works. How does the system work? What are cognitive functions? How do you take the 4 letters, and how do you decide how your cognitive function stack is, your car model, how you learn information, make decisions, all that kind of stuff. Educate. Books are written, seminars are held. We're going to go speak in Copenhagen very shortly this summer, along with Dr. Nardi at the British Association of Psychological Type. They've invited us to come and do one of their keynote sessions for that experience. So we're going to go and we'll talk about some education stuff and all this, and it's wonderful. I think education is powerful, and I think that's where type has been living for a long time. And then that 3rd category of translate, I think there's an opportunity here. And this is kind of where I think our hearts are attuned. It's the idea of taking the things that we relate around and the things that we understand through education, but we help translate the value of what this means, like the data of it, into our real lives. We help translate, okay, if I have ENFP preferences, that's how I'm wired, and I lead with exploration or extroverted intuition, and I make my decisions best with authenticity or introverted feeling, what does that actually translate that to a meaning in my life? Like, that's nice to know in an education frame. And maybe you could say, well, maybe you have these behaviors and I can relate to somebody, but those are some shallow surface things. What if we went a layer deeper? How could we translate this into the value in my life? And I think this is where personality type's starting to head. I think some of the work that Dr. Nardi does, or we do, or other people in our ecosystem like Dr. John Beebe, I think it's an attempt to take a lot of the information and make it real, translate it into a real thing in our lives. So we did some of this work on that Whiteboards Archetypes weekend where we did the translate on the message, but we also talked about, in a business way, how do you translate the value of something and present it to somebody and have it transactional, have it be something that they want to engage with you around. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this is something we could talk about tonight. We're going to kind of crowdsource. Maybe there's some comments or questions or things that you have kind of with those three frames. I think a lot about this. I think Antonia does too. So we're kind of welcoming that conversation. Is that clear what I'm saying about the relate, educate, translate framework? And I think this translate thing has a lot of bang for the buck. I think there's a lot of value here in that. Do you have comments on this too before we possibly open it up?
Yeah, all three are really important.
Yes.
I mean, the root of the word relationship is relate. And so we built a lot of relationships on our ability to understand each other. And that's a lot of the power of type systems. Not that every person of the same type is going to be exactly the same, but there's going to be an understanding. There's going to be, the firmware is going to be similar. But even beyond that, even if you're not relating based on a shared personality type, the relationships that bloom from, say, just recognizing that we all overvalue our own experience. And so somebody of a different personality type is going to be seeing the same thing that you're looking at in a completely different way. You can still build relationships on relating. Now the person shares how they're seeing things, you share how you're seeing things, and now you can relate to each other not by doing make-wrongs that they see it differently than you and vice versa, but you can start to build a better relationship on the relating principle. Educate is really important because there's a lot of distinctions to be had, and the system goes really deep. Robert Anton Wilson says that the best models are the ones that are useful at their baseline level or at their simplest level, but can be expanded upon indefinitely. And Myers-Briggs, Jungian functions, it fits that qualification. It is beneficial at its absolute baseline level. Like if you just know that you're an extrovert or an introvert, that can literally change somebody's life. Right? Just knowing that and going, oh, you mean I don't have to hit every party? And the fact that I'm having my energy drained like crazy. And you mean I have permission to stay home and maybe I'm not broken. Yeah. Or maybe I was an extrovert in a house full of introverts and my higher energy or my output is not necessarily bad and wrong and I'm not assaulting other people with it. That can be a game changer. But the further down you go, I mean, every time I think I know everything about type, it changes on me again. I learn one more layer down, and then now it just blasts open, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another layer I have to now understand and master. So it's beneficial at its highest concept level, but it also goes on indefinitely. And so the educate piece is how we hit those lower layers, right? We understand them and we go, oh, this dichotomy level is super interesting. And then you go down one more layer and you're like, oh my goodness, there's this cognitive function thing that I didn't even know about, right? Now you've got like years of education in front of you. And then you go down one more layer and there's like Jungian archetypes and that's a whole thing.
Or subtypes.
Right, or subtypes or whatever. The thing about the translate though, here's why we go down to translate and then bounce back up to educate, I think this is why we stay in the realm of educate over and over and over again.
You mean people or us personally?
People that understand type.
The general audience of personality type. People that are attuned to this, that pay attention to it.
Yeah. Why we have a tendency to stay there and why it's easy to stay there. Translate is hard because it requires you not to overvalue type. In order to actually translate the value out of it, you have to understand what its limitations are. And the only way to understand the limitations of something is to get to a point of wisdom. So there's a model I talk about a lot on the podcast, so stop me if you've heard it, but don't actually stop me because I'm going to say it anyway. It's called DIKW. It stands for Data, Information, Knowledge, and Wisdom. And these are 4 different layers of a relationship to a concept. And data is the most baseline piece. It's like ones and zeros. I think of it as like words or letters. And when you have data is, it's important. But when you put data together, then you can build on it and create information. So you take these letters and words and then you turn them into sentences and paragraphs. And now they're information, right? You can do something with it. To graduate from information to knowledge is the first big leap. And that is now you have to apply it. And when you go from information to knowledge, it means that now you've seen it in practice, now you've seen it played out, and now you understand it experientially. That's knowledge. And then the final level is wisdom. And wisdom is that point where you realize where you can break the rules, or when the rules of this thing no longer play out. So the old adage of knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Okay, so that's trying to communicate the jump from knowledge to wisdom, and you can only do that through a lot of experience. And it's hard to find experiences with type other than just relating. Right? We relate. We talk about it. We use it in conversations. We try to understand each other around it. But to go from knowledge to wisdom means that we have to be living it. And it's not always easy to figure out how to do that. You also have to realize that the theory breaks down a lot. Right? The things you count on theoretically will not necessarily play out in reality. And that's because no theory can, right? Theories are always maps. And as the old adage in general semantics says, the map is not the territory. So it's understanding where the map has limitations and that the actual territory is a different ball of wax. So translate means that you have to see it not as a doctrine. You can't see it as dogma. You can't attach to it too much in order to translate its value. You have to hold it a little loosely. And you have to watch it play out in your life. You have to see where you've leaned on it and it really helped out, and where you leaned on it and it failed you. And so the translate piece means that we can't use it as like the only way of seeing reality. We have to pepper it in with other forms of wisdom. And when you're learning the system and you're in the educate part, you don't want to think that it has any of those holes. You don't want to think that it has a limitation, or that the rules are broken all the time, or that this person shows up. It's like, well, you're supposed to be a sensor. How come you're into intuitive things? And it's like, because they are. Because they just are fascinated by it. And there's all sorts of reasons why. Mm-hmm. So the translate piece is a little stickier and more difficult. And it also requires us to be in a wisdom frame. It requires, it asks something from us. We have to be accountable to it. We have to show up in our own lives, and we have to watch ourselves mature through the system. And so I remember reading a comment one time online where a person said, I remember why I read the comment, because personality hacker was mentioned, and I had this software at the time that let me know anytime personality hacker was mentioned anywhere on the internet. It's a total vanity project, like anything like that. It's like you're supposed to be scouring from how your brand shows up, but it was just me just like figuring out what people were saying about us, really, if I'm being radically honest. And and one of the things that they said was, well, personality hacker always uses type in personal development. I don't think you have to use it that way. So I sat with that for a long time. I was like, can you use type and not use it in a personal development way? And the answer is yes, if you want to hit a glass ceiling. If you want to not be able to understand each of the layers underneath, you absolutely can use it in, I get other capacities. I'm still trying to figure out how it wouldn't eventually lead to some sort of personal development frame. But as our friend Dr. Dario Nardi says, if you're going to talk about type, you have to talk about development, right? You just do, because it's woven into it. It's the point of origin. It is where it was birthed in Jungian analysis to help, and as a therapeutic model, as a way for people to become better versions of themselves. Yeah. And so since that's its point of origin, it's like, well, I guess you can use it without like stripping that piece away, but you're not going to understand the heartbeat of it. You're not going to understand why it was developed in the first place. And it's always going to be this sort of 1 degree of separation from the purpose of the model. So in order to get to translate, we have to use it for development. We have to use it for a personal development application. And we have to watch where it supports us and where it fails us, where we over-rely on it to explain everything, and where that's not necessarily appropriate. And we have to watch ourselves grow with the model. And so I think the translate piece requires us to do development. And I've started to think of personal growth or personal development. Because I didn't really have a good definition for it before. But I realized that my working definition of personal development is accelerated maturity. Right? Why do we get into personal growth at all? Because we didn't learn a lesson. There was something everybody else got that we didn't. And now it's screwing us up. Now we're hitting the law of diminishing returns. Now we're like, why can't I figure this thing out? Everybody else has a healthy relationship. Why don't I have a healthy relationship? Or everybody else can figure out their career stuff. Why can't I figure out my career stuff? Or, Why can't I get healthy? And personal development goes, okay, for whatever reason, not necessarily your fault, but for whatever reason, this is the message you missed. All right, so you're going to have to focus on that one, and you're going to have to do extra because you're not young anymore. You're going to have to do extra to grow in this one particular thing. And usually when we're doing that, we're like, oh, I know why I missed this one because I don't like it, right? I just don't like this area, so I don't want to do this one, which usually makes personal development even more difficult because you're like, now I know why I missed the lesson. Or maybe you love it, and it's just because your parents failed you. I don't know, but usually it's because...
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
Often, but usually it's because, and you didn't pick it up on your own because you didn't particularly like it. So accelerated maturity is, if we're going to use my working definition and pretend that I'm right, and that's what personal development is, then translate means accelerated maturity, right? Translating the value of this system and going from just learning more about it to really understanding its heartbeat, its original intent, the nucleus of it. It means finding areas of our life in which the model helps us accelerate our maturity. And that's actually what it's best for. That is its absolute, I would say that to translate the real value and worth of it is to see it as a map of development and growth, to see it as a map of our highest leverage accelerated maturity. And I don't know how we can really talk about type and identity and the value of all this and strip that piece out. Like, I think it has to be intrinsic in a conversation around type. Otherwise, we're just always we're gonna keep putting the tomatoes in a fruit salad. Yeah.
So we meet with Dr. John Beebe at least once a month. We do some private coaching. We've done it for multiple years to keep refining. And he doesn't really offer coaching, but I figured out how to get a hold of him through actually Dr. Nardi. And I basically asked him if he would be willing to work with us to help us develop some of the content that we bring to people and work on that translate piece because he has the 8-function model and all of this. And he talks a lot about typology, but he says there's a part of typology that's also topology, almost like a map of development, like Antonia's talking about. And so I want to kind of introduce that idea, this topology of translation of where you are in your life. And I think translate can also mean the growth, the actual embodiment of it, but also can be in how we talk about this. We can translate it to different terms. I mean, I think the Myers-Briggs system itself is a translated language from Jung, right? Jung's a little bit esoteric and convoluted. Like, people have a hard time sometimes. Jung's a very difficult read. Sometimes it's hard to understand the concepts. Sometimes you don't know how to apply it. And then the Myers-Briggs system comes along, and it helps neatly organize this into a very usable and, I would say, tokenized, replicatable model that's been tested for decades that can produce results. And in a way, that model itself is translating the value of the Jungian cognitive functions and what Jung was bringing. And there's other ways we can do that. But I think the model itself is already translate. And so I think that we can think in terms of, okay, how do we now take that and translate it to people's lives? So, having said that, what's coming up for people in here? Anyone have a comment, something that's striking them, it's sparking an idea or a question or something you'd like to share? Come on, right back here. Come on up. Thank you so much. Give her a hand for coming up. All right. So you don't need to touch the mic. It's all good. Okay. What's your name?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. And where are you from, Rebecca?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. What's coming up for you?
Do you know your best fit type?
Oh, yeah. Do you know your best fit type?
Best fit type, ENTJ. Great question, because it kind of has to do with I'm dating an ESTJ. And I'm wondering, what is my leverage point for introducing in the relating aspect of type to a sensor if you're an intuitive? And, knowing the car model, I can tap into his 10-year-old NE, which is fun. But if I want to get a little bit more serious, what would be best strategies for tapping into a sensor from an intuitive position?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to, and I do want to make it clear.
You can stay here because
yeah,
I might want to
please
ask you
feel
follow-up
free.
questions. I know it's awkward to stand there, but
No, not at all. Go ahead.
hang tight.
I
He has
think,
ESTJ preferences and you have ENTJ preferences. So I just want to make sure that. Okay, go ahead.
I think that there's actually a lot of sensors that are into type. The qualifier for a sensor to be into type, it seems that they have to see that there's a practical application in their life. Now, most people who get attracted to type, I've noticed, as a general rule, or maybe it's just the people we attract, I don't know. But it seems like the people who are the most interested in type are the ones that were somehow misfits. Somehow they didn't fit in their context. And type helped them understand how they were different from the people that surrounded them. The reason why I suspect the reason why it attracts a disproportionately high number of intuitives is, it's the topic. Psychology tends to be interesting to intuitives. But I know lots of sensors that are super into psychology, especially now since psychology is a very accepted concept, right? It's not this weird thing that people go and talk to a psychologist and lay on a bed. Right. It's now folded into our everyday conversations. Like people are super into psychological concepts, so it's not
mental health.
Yeah, mental health. These are all these are in the zeitgeist. So I don't think sensors are necessarily against these kinds of psychological principles. I think
clearly they're not because they love personality. Many love personality type. But I think when a person can't figure out why they're so different from everybody that surrounds them, and that tends to be not always, but tends to be the case with intuitives, right? An intuitive that was raised in a family of sensors, or maybe an intuitive thinker raised around a bunch of feelers, or there's just something that was off. Whatever it is, whatever the discrepancy is, type helps them understand why they're different from others. And if somebody with sensory preferences has never felt like a misfit, they've never felt different from everybody else that surrounds them, then they might not see the value of it as much until they get to a place where type starts to explain the challenges that they have in relationship, right? The first level is relate. Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit of component here too that sometimes they've already been a little propagandized against it, right? Like there is this sort of like Myers-Briggs is pseudoscience, it's a fad, it's the same as astrology, blah, 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 blah. And we've recorded podcasts on that, so feel free to send those to him. But if that's the thing.
And not to interrupt, or they have been, even in their career, been introduced to several other methodologies that don't have that deeper level or go that deeper self-development
DISC,
level.
Big Five, some of these are circulating,
exactly.
Or Myers-Briggs at a very basic level.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And feel free to interrupt at any time because I just keep talking. So, absolutely. So they may have been introduced. It may not have been as helpful. In fact, somebody with ESTJ preferences might have watched a company give like an insane amount of money to another company just to do these assessments, and then it didn't end up going anywhere. So they might have like a bit of an attitude, and that's kind of understandable, actually. The awesome thing is that the business application of type allowed it to spread fast, right? And so it like disseminated all over the place, which is a plus, right? Because then it got in the hands of a lot of people. But the drawback was then it became like a business application, and people started to see it as a way to vet employees, which can be a bit offensive on its own, and you have to be very careful with that anyway, right? So if that's the only thing that they know, then that's going to be their frame of reference, and they're going to be like, oh, well, that's not that's not that helpful. That said, in a relationship way, I could see actually. And mileage may vary, so I have to test it out. Mm-hmm. But I could see two people leading with extroverted thinking or effectiveness getting along in so many different ways, and really like having like sort of coming to the same conclusion and being like, yeah, absolutely, that's like super important, super
very
valuable.
Organized.
Yeah, that's right. And everything's just
making money.
Everything's
This is what I imagine it's like. I don't know. I imagine you guys are like
too far off.
Super rich, very healthy, have your schedules all lined up.
You get
I'm like,
at 3:30 every morning.
So wonderful.
Yeah. So, I mean, not all of them, but that's just the assumption that we make, right?
Right.
Because we're to any dominance, and that's not what it looks like. So, but it's like there's a lot of things that are going to be real and simpatico, and then all of a sudden not. Mm-hmm. Okay, just all of a sudden, just bafflingly, you're like, yeah, I know you're totally wrong.
Right.
And they're like, no, I'm totally right. And you're like,
That
okay.
tracks.
Yeah. And so what's the difference? Is it just that you're different people? Is it just that one person's wrong and one person's right? And at those moments, one can introduce the concept of type as not as like okay, let me tell you your car model and my car model. Let's put them side by side. And this is why blah, 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 blah. Like that's one way of introducing it, which is usually like overwhelming. People don't care. Or you can just kind of feed it well, I think when you're looking at this piece of information, you're more certain than I am on this thing. You have more certainty around this. So I'm kind of spitballing on this one. But I think in these situations, I think I actually have more certainty than you do in this, and just like kind of these little cookie crumb trails of the differences. Having two extroverted thinking dominants means that you're going to get up at 3:30 and make a lot of money, apparently. But it also means you're both going to have introverted feeling or authenticity as an inferior 3-year-old function.
Our blind spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's going to be some challenge there, right? And so introducing like these ideas of this is how I started to develop this part of myself, and this is the model that I used, might create a little bit of admiration. Right, for doing the hard thing, that this person in particular will understand why it's so hard, right? They will share the same challenge. And so if you're like, this is actually how I'm working on this part of me that tripped me up too. Right. And this is my method. These are my tools for dealing with this. That might create a little admiration for what you're doing. And then it might create a little bit more respect or interest in the tool that you're using. Right. So anytime a person wants to introduce type to somebody who's not that interested, I think that I think the lack of interest should actually be honored, right?
Absolutely. Well, we were talking earlier, and I effortlessly can cook, right? Mm-hmm. It just comes natural.
Yeah.
He effortlessly can read people. And I gave him the example, like, I would never take cooking lessons from you, but I need help reading people, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
And that's what Myers-Briggs and Personality Hacker does for me. And that just clicked. Mm-hmm. Like I gave him a concrete example for his SI to just latch onto, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, in relatability, it's relating the model to life. Right. Okay. And it's creating a relationship between the model to the practical elements.
And you're very smart not going, and this is what you're doing wrong. You're more like highlighting it like, and here's, you're really good at this, and I would learn from you in that. Like, you're positive in it. And I think it's really part of the translation, too. People need to see it showcasing the best of themselves first before they can, like, deep dive into, like, okay, and I got some things that are blind spots and some challenges. So I think it's smart the way you're approaching it.
I think it's been interesting that for some reason, I had this misunderstanding for several years now that as an intuitive, I would probably pair better with an intuitive. And I have found that I pair so much better with a sensor because I might just be a little too in the clouds, too much in my way of thinking and all my dreaming and all that. And the sensor just keeps me so grounded. So I'm always looking for leverage points for relating because of that.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Did that help at all?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Give her a hand. Who else? Thank you. Who else has something else they'd like to bring up? Topic, question, kick off a convo? This is your chance. Everybody who's got something. Anybody got something that's sparking for them they'd like to come up and share or talk about? Yeah, come on up. Give her a hand. Thanks for coming up and being part of this. So what's your name?
Husna.
Husna? You don't have to lean down. You're good. You can just stand and be relaxed and just have a great conversation with us.
Yeah.
So where are you from?
I'm near Annapolis in Pasadena.
Okay, in Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And do you know your best fit type?
I'm an ENFP.
Uh-oh. Oh, I know about those people.
I know you can relate. Yeah.
So what's coming up? What's sparking for you?
Yeah, so, no, you're so right, and it resonated with me when you were talking about intuitives, when you compare intuitives to sensors, and having an ENFP preference, I've always felt like a misfit. There's a lot of parallel universes going on, right, for me. So the older I get, the more I can manufacture, relating is important, and I can manufacture that. But then I think, okay, at what point do I have to manufacture relatability until it no longer serves my authenticity? Until I feel, and I know the answer for me is I feel drained, I feel tired, I feel like, but I mean, I guess as an ENFP, we're always looking at possibilities and the glass half full, and so we're always wanting to. So I guess where's that line when you have to say, okay, relating is not working, and that's okay because you can't relate to everybody. I mean, at some point you have to just kind of walk away. But I think the more contentious it gets these days with what's going on, and it's hard to not want to still want to feel like you've made your mark in the world. And so my question is, at what point do you kind of say, okay, I've tried, I'm going to stick, a flag in it saying it's done. When do you move on?
Yeah. So maybe I just want to understand a little bit more what you're asking. Are you talking about, like, in a work context, having to get along with people that you don't typically vibe with, and you're contorting yourself to be able to make that happen, and they're not? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, let's say that. But I mean, the older I get, the more I'm like, I'm not contorting for anybody. I mean, it is what it is. It's not going to change.
Take me or leave me.
Yeah, but I think in certain situations, especially around work, and you have to kind of keep that professionalism and all of that.
Yeah.
How do you navigate through those circumstances?
Well, it's certainly the eternal, lifelong struggle for the ENFP personality type to balance that kind of professionalism that comes from that 10-year-old of effectiveness that we both have. You and I both have the same preferences. So it's this like desire, it's almost this eternal child energy that shows up for us, that wants to look professional, wants to have it together. And we feel more comfortable if we can be ourselves a little bit. But the professional world really requires this of us. I mean, I can remember walking in, the dude probably had like ESTJ preferences or something. I walked into this business client meeting with another partner of mine to get this business project. This was like 15 years ago, before Personality Hacker. And it was a fantastic meeting. I pitched them on this like social media management and some media production. And he's like, okay, well, I need where's your business card? I'm like, I don't have business cards. He's like, you don't have business cards? I'm like, no, I don't. We just had a conversation. I can give you my contact information. I can write something. He's like, oh. And he got really cold and weird. I'm like, this is weird. This is going really off the rails here. So I thank you. We leave. But the woman that I was partnering with at the time, like, kept the conversation. And she came back. She's like, hey, we lost the deal, man. I'm sorry. Why? How? It was going great. He's like, he mentioned you didn't have a business card. You didn't have a business card on you, and done. He doesn't want to do business with you. He said he doesn't trust people that don't have business cards. And I'm like, really? And my little eternal effect is like, oh man, I ruined the whole thing by not having a freaking business card? Like, what? Like, that was just like, I had no idea that was going to ruin an opportunity for me. And this feels like this BS the world needs from us in the business world, right?
Yes.
You identify with this. Yeah. So I think the struggle is real, and I feel like probably the world you roll in is very professional. You live in Maryland. I'm guessing you're in a very professional setting there. I just want to acknowledge the struggle before we address what it is. So the idea of contorting yourself is one thing. The other idea of playing the game is another. So are you finding yourself at work giving away your authentic self on behalf of, like the business card thing? I could have done a business card. I don't think that's giving away my authentic self. I could have been younger and persnickety, but that's not giving away my authentic self. That's just playing the game that needs to be played in that context. Right. So are we talking about playing the game but just having the business card? Are we talking about, no, I actually literally have to push who I am aside to play this?
Yeah, well, I think that's the struggle, is when do I play the game and when do I double down on my authenticity? And that comes with wisdom, right? Because you had said it comes with wisdom, and, it's always, be self-aware of it. But why the hell should I be self-aware when, I feel like nobody else isn't? Not everybody, but, I'm like, oh my God, hello, self-awareness. They're like, what? I'm like, forget it.
The right balance, is it okay?
Yeah, please. Okay.
And I don't want to be self-righteous, like God, like I'm not, like.
That's totally how we're reading you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, you're coming off.
I have a lot of issues, but I'm not trying to be righteous. But there's people that are like, hello, it's like, common decency, but so.
Yeah. It's easy to be asleep in the contemporary world, and particularly asleep to ourselves. Yeah. And so you can observe that and notice it without necessarily judging it. So I don't think you're necessarily judging it, but you are observing something that it's easy to fall asleep to ourselves. And so I think it's a valid question. And so there's I'm going to speak a little abstractly, a little theoretically, and see if you can match this to your own experience and in your life.
We'll try to translate it together.
Right. So the question that I hear when somebody with EFP preferences asks, when do I play the game and when do I show up as my authentic self? Or when do I just have to do what the world requires of me? In archetypal language, when you look at the CAR model or when you look at your cognitive functions, the second function of introverted feeling or authenticity, which is the function that you're trying to figure out when you should be championing, right? When that is the thing that should be coming up. Dr. John Beebe aligns the energy with that of parental energy. That's the archetype he associates with that. And when I think of that, I think of it as our inner parent. Like, it's the part of us that should be parenting ourselves, is that function. Or at least that's a gateway to inner parenting. It's a way to understand it. And then the function that is on the other side of extroverted thinking or effectiveness, which is what you're also talking about, is paired with eternal child energy, which is relevant because that means, just like all children, it's going to be uncertain. And when a kid is uncertain, it's really, it's easy for us as parents to come in and want to save them and let them set the tone. And when you're in a context where you're surrounded by a lot of, because Annapolis is very close to Washington, D.C., I would say D.C. is very much an extroverted thinking or effectiveness town, right? It's like that's the dominant energy, or that's what it feels like to me.
A lot of power,
a lot of power, a lot of, exactly, a lot of structural setting up and that sort of thing. And so because of that, as Joel mentioned, that little eternal child part of you is gonna want to be seen because it's uncertain, but it's gonna want to be seen by others as being able to play the game just like everybody else, and it's gonna be seeking head pats. And when it gets in a place of uncertainty and agitation, it might call on introverted feeling or authenticity to now cater to it. Like, help me manage my feelings, help me accomplish my goal of getting a head pat. And that's what we call the parent serving the child. Right? So anytime a context asks you to contort your introverted feeling or authenticity to serving your extroverted thinking or effectiveness outcome or desires, that's when you're distorting the dynamic. That's when it's going, quote unquote, too far. Okay. And how does that look? Well, what does introverted feeling or authenticity do for you? It helps you understand how you're feeling in a situation. It helps you understand what your values are, what means something to you, what's important to you, what's something that you can let slide, and what's something that you have to stand for, right? Plant a flag in the ground. All right. And so if that part, just like a parent can sometimes compromise their own values in behalf of their child, right? Like a parent's like, no, I don't think you should spoil children. But then the kid goes, please, 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 please. And it's like, okay, right? That's compromising the value of a parent because it's easy as a parent. It's like, okay, I'll just give you what you want because you said, please, please, please. And I found you annoying. So here, have what you want. But a good parent goes, no, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. Right? And then the kid goes, please, 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 please. It's like, and if you keep saying please, then you're also going to have things taken away from you, right? You like set a standard. And then eventually kid gets the deal that the parent is not serving the child. The child is actually subservient to the parent. And then now the dynamic is restored and everybody's happier. You see those like, do you remember like super nanny shows where you saw like the kid out of control and the parent was just trying to serve the child and give them what they needed?
It's never the kid's fault.
Right.
Nanny's never working with the kid.
That's right. And everybody's miserable and everybody's unhappy, right? I saw one where a kid like slapped a mom across the face and she's like, now you know you're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that I would have been nuked on the spot had that been me and I was a kid slapped my mom, but I guess that kid got away without being murdered. But it's just, it's miserable. It is miserable when a child is in control of a family because they know they're not supposed to. Right. And they are like, I don't know what I'm doing. So if everybody's serving me, then we're all in a bad place. And that happens inside of us. When we allow the eternal child energy to gain too much power, when it has outsized influence and power in our choices and decisions, then everybody's miserable. But if it's serving the parent, that is the right dynamic and everything calms down. Everybody feels like they should. Okay, so that's like 1,000 words to say the 10 words I'm about to say, which is do whatever your extroverted thinking or effectiveness wants you to do, as long as that your parent is being a good parent in letting it have it, right? As long as your introverted feeling or authenticity has no beef with it, right? That's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly fine. But the moment it's asking for something that does not resonate with your introverted feeling or authenticity, it's a no, and I don't care how many times you beg. And if you keep asking, I'm going to take toys away, okay? It has to stand its ground. It has to be firm. So the dynamic looks in somebody with ENFP preferences, I know what I want. I know what's important to me.
I want it now.
I know what my well, for introverted feeling or authenticity, it's actually like, no, I just know I know what's right. I know what's right for me. And I know what I desire, and I know what I want, and I know what my motivations are, and I know what my intentions are, and I'm doing my best, just like a parent does its best to be better every day, right? It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to try to be better every day. And as long as that is the focal point, then you bring that extroverted thinking or effectiveness to get those met. It does the work, right, of making sure that your desires and wants, while staying in alignment with your true authentic nature and your convictions, when it's trying to get those accomplished. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
All right. So does it offend your introverted feeling or authenticity? And I don't mean just like on a surface level. I mean, have you done deep, true inner work to determine whether or not your authenticity is offended by playing the game?
Absolutely can be offended.
Right. Can be,
offended.
but not every time.
Correct.
Okay?
Yep.
So the times when it's offended, that's when you don't give the effectiveness the toy. Okay? And
Very good.
yeah, and when it's not offended, it doesn't matter. Right?
Wow, that's really great. That's a great distinction to have, and it lends to growing wiser, right? Applying those things that you said. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just, I want to reiterate the point that you just said, which is beautiful, which is it means growing wiser. Sometimes as a parent, we give our kids something we shouldn't have, and we have to reflect on that. We have to go, okay, I gave that away and I shouldn't have. But if we beat ourselves up, we're not being good parents there either. So sometimes you will compromise your authenticity or introverted feeling, and don't beat yourself up over it. All right, just make it a one-time deal. Does it make sense?
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It does make sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
All right.
Yeah.
Give her a hand. Let's get one more. Let's try to do one more person. Let's get somebody sparking a conversation, an idea, a question. What's coming up for you? Be brave. Come up to the microphone right here, back here. Run up. Nice. I don't have the Jeopardy music or the Wheel of Fortune. What is it? No, the Come On Down music. What is that? Was that Price is Right? That's what I'm thinking of. Price is Right.
Right. Give him a hand.
All right. So give him a hand for coming up. I should have done that. That would have been like the intro music for you. So what's your name, sir?
Manuel,
Manuel. Where are you from, Manuel?
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
You know your best fit type?
INFP.
Ooh, let's keep the NFP train running here.
Yes.
Fantastic.
My question is sort of an observation / follow-up to the question from the previous individual who's an ENFP. I have two push and pull forces right now, okay? My authenticity and sort of a change in even my perception of authenticity as I'm transitioning into middle age. My most recent career move was something that was done prior to this transition into middle age, and I felt as if I compromised my authenticity. I'm looking for a way that I can maybe not repeat that with my new sense of self as it emerges into my middle age. Does that kind of track make sense?
So what I hear you saying is that before this moment, when you're in this transition, you have previously been compromising yourself in business, like in your career. You think you've been giving away who you truly are, and you've not really been honoring your authenticity, introverted feeling.
Correct.
Driver. Okay. And your question is, how do I not do that going forward?
Right.
Okay. How have you been compromising? Give us more specifics, because that's kind of a general theoretical statement. So translate that now, the theme of the day, into how is that actually showing up for you in real life? Like, what do you mean by that? How have you compromised?
My most recent employment was, it was a high-level executive position within human resources. That was not my original career choice. I sort of fell into that. Originally, I was okay with that because I was able to sort of help people and connect with people. But as you kind of move up the ladder within that field, there's a sense of metrics. And for example, unfortunately, I had to head some layoffs, for example. And while I understand it from the business perspective, it doesn't feel good. So as I'm looking to transition career-wise, I'm looking for something that might be, that wouldn't place me in that compromising position.
Yes.
Does that track or make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you mind if I push a little bit on what you just said, just to kind of make sure that because the question of how do I make sure I don't compromise my authenticity again? And I also heard you say that you really moving into it and coming to a full awareness is something relatively new.
Yes.
Okay. Right. I mean, you've always led with introverted feeling or authenticity, so it's always been there. But like the full
stepping into it,
owning it. Yeah, exactly. Having that from relationship. So you said that layoffs didn't feel good, right?
Right.
Okay. Did they not? So there's a distinction in introverted feeling or authenticity between something that doesn't feel good and something that doesn't feel right.
Okay.
All right. And so in a situation like that, do you feel like the layoffs were morally or ethically wrong? Did they hit your values? Or were they just deeply uncomfortable and felt really awful to do?
Were you uncertain, or was it like a deep, like, this is wrong?
Kind of a combination of the two, because I guess I understood it from a logistic perspective, and without necessarily revealing anything, because working in HR, you get to see a lot of things behind the scenes. There were some factors or variables I was aware of that, in my estimation, there were other possibilities, and not all possibilities were exhausted. There's probably any. And the way in which the layoffs were conducted, I didn't feel were done in a very humane way. I tried my best to do them in a humane way, but because effectiveness is such a key function in the business world, I felt that I was in a catch-22, if you gather my meaning.
Yeah.
Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Yeah. All right. So the reason why I asked is, in some ways, the question I asked is the center of the question you must ask to make sure that you're not compromising yourself in work opportunities.
Okay.
Which is, you have to, when you lead with introverted feeling or authenticity, you have to get really good at knowing the distinction between, particularly in business, between what is offending your values and what just feels terrible. Okay? Or doesn't feel good. Because things that don't feel good, and you're very equipped to be able to process the emotions that emerge from something not feeling good. But something that doesn't feel good doesn't necessarily mean that it offends your values.
Okay.
All right, and doesn't offend your authenticity. Sometimes hard things just have to happen. And I've known some IFPs that are like kind of ruthless, right? Like they actually, even if it doesn't feel good, they're like, no, I totally understand why I have to do this, right? They're kind of, they can tolerate a lot because they can sit with the discomfort of something that doesn't feel good if they understand why it must happen, if they see a bigger picture. What I'm hearing you say is that it wasn't that it happened, it was how it happened. It was the rollout of it. I was very uncomfortable with that.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, there's no real way of being able to future pace or predict how a company is going to go about things. Except if you align yourself with a company that has a mission statement or a set of values. I mean, they all have mission statements and all that stuff, and, like, they do that because they're supposed to at this point, or that's the thing you do. But there are some companies that are actually very much in alignment with their mission statement. And so what you're looking for is people who have core values, written core values and written mission statements that they actually believe in, and you'll be able to hear or feel whether or not there's a ring of truth there. And part of what's in their core values is not what they do, but how they go about it, to make sure that you're in resonance with how they go about things. This is why a lot of people with INFP preferences end up in nonprofits or other styles of, companies that are more, they feel like they're more human-centered than they are necessarily profit-centered. Although if you work enough nonprofits, you know that they can sometimes also go about things in not particularly ethical way. So that's not a sure thing at all. But the point is that you're looking for a company that actually cares, right? And that when the people you're talking to, like the people who are hiring or whatever, that they communicate that this is not lip service. And a part of it is you need to trust, and you will more and more as it becomes more embodied and give yourself more permission around it. You'll get to a point where you can kind of almost like sniff out whether or not these core values are real and that they are in alignment with them, or whether or not they're bullshit. Okay? Here's another thing that you might be able to do. And this is, I think, just as good business practice when you're looking for a job, is when you go in, and you might already do this, and if you do, just go, yeah, I totally already do that. But when you go in, you're not just being interviewed, you're interviewing. Okay? So when we need a job, that means we need money, and when we need money, we get pretty desperate. And that's 100% of us, right? This is our livelihood. And yet there is some value when you go into a job interview and understanding that this is a two-way street. You're not just wanting to appear as if you're qualified and that they think you're valuable enough to hire, which there will be an impulse in your extroverted thinking or effectiveness 3-year-old, right? That part of you that's deeply uncertain. It's really hard to be rejected, especially in a business context, because you go, oh, does that mean that they don't think I have value and worth? So you kind of have to get right with that part of you. And you might already be right. You might already be like, yeah, I don't care. If somebody doesn't hire me, I don't see that as personal at all. But if you do, that's the impulse you kind of have to fight with. Showing up and wanting to convince and wanting to sell yourself and wanting them to see you as valuable. If you can calm that mechanism down, that uncertainty that we can sometimes have in our 3-year-old or inferior function, and show up realizing that if they're not the right place, right? This is not the right context. If this is not the right gig for you, then you can leave and go, yeah, this is not right. Right? Or you can even say it to them. Yeah, I don't know if I gel with your core values. That would be quite a thing to say in an interview, right? But it reminds you that you have power on your side as well. And that moment of rejecting them means 6 months down the line, you're not dealing with all these ethical dilemmas and all these sleepless nights and all this horrible situation that you're in. Because at the point of origin, you made sure to do proper vetting. So I suspect that one of the most empowering things somebody with IFP preferences, and in this case INFP preferences, can do, is understand that every job interview is you interviewing the company. Does that track?
Right.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was aware of it, but I think at the time it was a really great opportunity. So there was that temptation, and maybe it was the TEs like, hey, I'm being noticed. And I'm thinking that moving forward, that's something I have to kind of be aware of. But it's just doing it. But I mean, some of that is helpful. It tracks, and it's just kind of good to kind of get that sort of confirmation.
Yeah, I would just add one more thing, and maybe this also goes for the ENFP or right before you. You don't have to get all your fulfillment in your emotional world at work either. There's a lot of things you can do outside of work to continue to boost yourself. And I would encourage anyone with introverted feeling or authenticity to ensure you're doing hygiene outside of the workplace with your feelings. Because sometimes the emotional material that you want to engage with at work is just not available. You just can't go there in an emotional way or in a feeling way. And so it can kind of feel like I feel really shut off here. So making sure you have other avenues to continue to develop that. Sometimes then you can go into work, it's like, okay, I can deal with the lack of this here because I'm working on it outside of this space. So I think that's another option or possibility too to be thinking about in that. Yeah. So I wish you luck on this. I guess you just got this career transition, this job, or are you just in the midst of it?
Kind of. I think what made it difficult, and just losing the clarification, is the previous job before Dan. Really, the values were there, but because of situations that happened, I could no longer work there.
Yeah.
And I almost just kind of had to grab something. And now I'm kind of like, oh, I want to look for the values again, but I'm struggling with finding the place with the values again.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it honestly, it's difficult. It truly is, and I think this is one of the reasons why sometimes people with IFP preferences sort of renounce all of that and go like, I'm not even going to enter that world. But the other thing is, and not that you necessarily have to be a crusader for this, but there is something to be said from being like an inside man, right? Like sometimes you can, not necessarily in all positions in all companies, but in smaller companies, you can sometimes have more of a say. And you can be a moral center or a moral compass. You can be somebody who's not just like on the receiving end of orders that feel terrible, but you can also make suggestions on how we could go about this. And here's the other one, is extroverted intuition or exploration.
Your co-pilot.
Your co-pilot, right? This function has a really, it has a superpower in persuasion. It can sell people on an idea. It can get them actually excited about it. And in a situation where, like, say, maybe you just took a job because you have to take it. I mean, it's very idealistic to go, just find the company that matches your values and go get hired there and make sure you say no to all the other companies that, I mean, like, that's if you have the luxury of that. Sometimes you just have to get paid, all right? And that's the reality of the situation. So if you're in one of those situations,
the value's life and like living and like how you be able to feed yourself.
There's the deeper value of survival, right? And being able to pay your bills and not be in debt, right? Like there are layers to our and sometimes our values are a little privileged, right? Like it's like maybe I just need to eat this week, and that's the value. So there's the reality of that. And also, when you're in a situation where maybe you just had to take a gig, you just had to take a job, and that's just how it is, and they're not always going about things the way that you would like them to. One thing is to tap into a deeper value if you need to, but if you are in a situation where you can communicate ideas and concepts, which smaller companies give you more opportunities for that, and I would recommend maybe thinking in terms of smaller companies. When you do that, you have more ability to sell an idea, which includes things like the how of a rollout. So you're like, well, I think they could have done it better. I think that maybe they didn't exhaust all options before they did layoffs. Well, is there a way where you can communicate the advantage to doing the rollout better? Does that make sense? It's like if they...
The human advantage.
The human advantage. Yeah, right. Because there's other costs besides money that introverted feeling or authenticity remembers. And sometimes extroverted thinking or effectiveness forgets. And if you can create a case, sell the idea that the how of it's not the what. You're like, no, I understand. Sometimes you need to lay people off. But I kind of came up with a plan that makes it so that we can roll it out in the most effective way possible, including all of these things that aren't just bottom line considerations, and then use your extroverted intuition or exploration to get them excited about the idea, see it, right? Sell them on the concept. And in that way, you're not just contending with like, well, this is the real world, but also, like, I don't really like this. Now you have a part of you that's empowered to potentially, not always, but potentially do something about it. But that part of you, that extroverted intuition part of you, has to get good at selling an idea, which I know you enough to know that you probably have a little of that on lock, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So that's the other piece, is empower yourself to try to influence things for the better, if at all possible. And then it's just remember that sometimes you got to do what you got to do for survival, and then layer the values on top of that. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Like survival, obviously, you got to stay alive before you can feel good about what you're doing.
You got it. Yeah. And remember, there's something to be said for that, right? Your survival as a human is important too. So don't devalue your survival as a reason to do something. And then when you have other opportunities, then make sure that the other parts of your ethical consideration gets woven in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Give him a hand.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right.
I did want to say one more thing. Rebecca, who had asked, how do I communicate type to somebody who I'm in a relationship with? And sometimes this can feel like a sensor intuitive thing. I just want to make a comment that like there's plenty of sensors who try to get their intuitive partners and friends into type and they couldn't care less. So it goes the other direction too. But I wanted to say that there's a phrase in marketing, and I think it's common in Silicon Valley, which is if you can communicate somebody's problem to them better than they can, they unconsciously ascribe to you the solution. And I think that's a really important principle to remember in type as well. If you can use type to communicate somebody's challenge better than they can, you have this really, really beautiful diagnostic. Sometimes that's a really nice gateway to the prescription, which you communicate can be woven into type as well. So that's part of the translate, right? Part of the translating of value of type is getting really good at diagnosing somebody's challenge. And that's what type is maybe even best at. Type is such a wonderful tool for diagnosing challenges. Why do I feel this way? What's going on with me? Like, is it because I'm broken or is it because of something else? And type goes, no, you're not broken. Like, this is just how you're pre-wired. Or this is how you're pre-wired and you still have the problem. Maybe you need to address it outside of type, right? It's really good at those diagnosing. So part of translating and communicating the value of the system is getting really good at diagnostics. And people oftentimes will be attracted. Like, I mean, in profiling, we experience this all the time. We profile somebody who doesn't know anything about type, and you don't even have to know the person's name. At the end of it, they'll say, I feel like you've read my mind like a crystal ball. You know more about me than friends and family members. And those people like will get super into type because they're like, that was amazing. But it's only through getting good at communicating. You have to have the relate, you have to have the educate, but you have to have the translate too. And the translate is communicating how this type shows up in a person's life.
I think also I have to represent the NF of it. So diagnostics and all of that that's what we do. That's what we teach. That's all the training. And I would also say that you could be the only good representation of the personality type that you are in the people's lives around you. In other words, you could be the best representation of that in a lived way. It translated into the actual way that you show up and live. Or, I mean, you could also be the stereotype of the type. Right? Like, oh, you're the INTP or you're the ENTJ or whatever it might be. Like, you know what I'm talking about? So you could be the stereotype, or you could be this representative like, wait, you're not the stereotype of this type. You're living in a very embodied way, and you're actually getting over your stuff, and you're actually showing up with your best self. Despite all the things that should be challenging in these areas, you're still mitigating them, and you're showing up anyway. That's very interesting. And I think that communicates loudly. Also the diagnostics, I'm not disagreeing with what she's saying, but I think also our embodiment, it's that relate, it's the attractor, and it helps translate this for people to say, oh, that's how you can live this out. Yeah. So you could be maybe the only good type representation of that type in somebody's life. Think about that. Yeah. And think about what that might mean for you and translating that to your own value and how you show up.
Well, and you might feel like you have all sorts of cheat codes for development and growth, which you do. Type gives us cheat codes. Yeah. So a part of communicating the value of type is also understanding that we can't talk about type unless we talk about development, and why it's so important to see personality as coming from its point of origin roots, the heartbeat of a therapeutic model, of a model that actually helps us heal. Right? We're all into healing these days. This is one of the earliest models that was used for healing in psychology. And that's its roots, right? That's where it started from. So if we use type as a therapeutic model, then it becomes more attractive, right? It becomes something that's desirable because it's not just something that we're trying to bequeath. Oh, you're this type. That's why you're doing this. All right. If you want people to hate type, say those words. All right. Oh, you're an ISFP, that's why you're doing this. That person will never want type ever again. But if you say, I have these type preferences and it's helped me become a better version of myself, and they watch you improve over time and they watch you accelerate your maturity, then they'll say, I'll have what they're having, right? Yeah. I want that.
Awesome. If you're watching or listening right now, back home, and you weren't able to be joining with us live, we do want to hear from you. What's coming up for you as we talk about this? Are you thinking about a question, a comment? or more importantly, come over and share your story. You can go do that at personalityhacker.com directly below this episode. We'd love to hear from you. And also, while you're there, if you want to check out one of our 16 owner's manuals for personality types, I think it's a great place to get started. You can also take a free assessment to discover your personality type if you don't know that yet. We've got a lot of resources and help there. So come over to personalityhacker.com and make your voice heard.
Yeah, and I just want to make a comment. There are people in the audience right now that have been part of our weekend, the Personality Life Path Program weekend.
Yeah.
And every time we do this, I'm reminded again of its power as a healing tool. But I'm also reminded of just how much we can get from this model, how much juice there is to squeeze, and how many shifts and transformations people can make when they understand it deeply. So if you're ready to get all spiritual with your personality type understanding, then I highly recommend that you check out the Personality Life Path Program. It's always a joy to conduct. We always attract amazing human beings, and real shifts, real translating shifts happen. So check out the Personality Life Path Program as well.
Fair enough. And then if you want to check us out online, or what are all the things you do to wrap up?
I'm supposed to say a bunch of things to wrap up, aren't I?
I think so.
If you enjoy the podcast, you can subscribe to us on a variety of platforms, Apple Podcasts and various Android platforms. If you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, I promise you I will read it. And because I read them all.
She reads all of them.
I do. I read them all because they're a little adrenaline shot to the heart, right? It's like, is this a message in a bottle? I mean, people showing up right now makes it not a message in a bottle. This is really exciting. But if you'd leave a rating and review, that would make me very happy. And you might be watching this on YouTube because we have a video podcast, and you might be watching our studio audience, and it's really awesome. So feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment on that as well. Did I say all the things?
I think you did.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks to our wonderful studio audience live here in Gettysburg. We're going to go hang out for a couple hours. I want to get to know everybody, and we get to talk about all this stuff offline, off the podcast. So if you're listening, you want to come out to a live podcast, you should do that. We'd love to have you here live. My name is Joel Markowitz.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast.